when I talk about success, it's unique to everyone. What is success in fitness for you? What is success in your career? What is success in your intimate relationship? What is success in your family life? When I talk about success, I'm talking about achievement, the ability to decide in advance that you want an outcome and then achieve it. And so only you define success for you. But when I said I was unsuccessful, what I meant is I had a business that I adored and I was helping a lot of people, but I wasn't successful enough to sustain it financially. And I wasn't hitting my financial goals. And so failure is nothing short of, in my opinion, not being able to achieve that which you intended to achieve or wanted to achieve. And this is why a lot of people don't set goals. They don't believe in themselves, or they think they do. They set goals that are outside of alignment, then they let themselves down, then they crush their self-esteem. So fulfillment is how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself. It's self-belief, self-worth, self-love, self-trust, all these things that are inner work. But achievement and success are external. Like, to achieve the home of your dreams is an external thing that you go and achieve, but it requires you to become a certain type of person. And so that's kind of why the success and fulfillment, hopefully that makes more sense. But ultimately, that's what we all want, right? We want to feel good about ourselves. We want self-belief. We want self-worth. Yes. We also want to achieve outcomes that matter to us.
Right. And that's the reason I asked the question, because in the context of podcasting, you could look at Joe Rogan and saying he's successful because he has millions and millions of downloads and making the money with it. But someone with 1,000 downloads a month might feel successful because, as you point out, that meets their goal, their own personal goal.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
And that's what would bring the fulfillment.
The unfortunate thing is most people are not defining success in advance, so like consciously, so they don't feel successful, but they don't necessarily know why necessarily. And the other piece of this too is, even if you have 1,000 downloads a month and you feel successful, that's great, but it's not going to stick around. This is the human condition. I remember our podcast, we've been in podcasting for 7 years. The first year, it took us an entire year to reach 1,054 listens. And now we get more than that each day. And I still don't feel successful, quote unquote. I feel more successful than I did back then, but I'm still trying to hit a next level. And that's the name of our company for a reason, Next Level University, because no matter what level you ever reach, you're always going to want to be reaching to another level. And that's not actually a bad thing, because otherwise you're going to get complacent at the level you're at.
Thank you. So I want to talk about entrepreneurs. As podcasters, we want to be entrepreneurs, or we try to be entrepreneurs, but we can't quite mesh our goals in podcasting and becoming an entrepreneur. I think that is why we sometimes struggle with making money in podcasting, right?
Yes.
And one of the things that we're told we need to do is to delegate. Let someone else do the busy work. How can we achieve peak performance as entrepreneurs and podpreneurs without burnout? And what is your tip for doing that?
So way back in the early days, Kevin and I, we had an in-person studio, and we did what's called a time audit because we were both burning down. We were doing, I think, 4 episodes a week at that point, and we didn't have enough money to sustain it, and we didn't have any more time, and we were coaching people at that point. So we started coaching, we started making more money, and we needed to reallocate our time into more profitable activities. And that's where a lot of business owners find themselves, and podcasters. So we call them listeners, longers, and business owners. So a listener is someone who wants to learn from you. That's a listener of your podcast. A longer is someone who wants to build their own podcast and build their own community. And a business owner is someone who wants to actually turn their passion into purpose for a profit. And so the podcast itself is how you take your passion and create a purpose in service of others. But making that profitable is a whole nother game. And so we sat down and we did a time audit, and we had this huge whiteboard in the studio, and we wrote down, okay, Alan and Kevin, we wrote down everything we do in a week. Everything from sleep, eating, everything. And we estimated the amount of hours per week we were spending on each of those things. And it was a huge whiteboard, completely full. And we looked and we calculated it. And we found out that there's only 12 hours left for total, so 6 each. And we realized, okay, this is not sustainable. First of all, our relationships are not going to be okay with this, because they want more quality time with us. He has his wife, Taryn. We were early entrepreneurs, grind time. We did not have any extra time. And unfortunately, that's the case with most early business owners, at least the ones that are headed towards success. So the question about delegation, how do you, and I call it the 3D plan. It's delete, number one. So there's 3 buckets of time that you have to look at. And I just did this with a client yesterday. So a time audit. What does that mean? Where are you investing your time? Okay, 3 buckets. The first bucket is not profitable activities. The second bucket is indirectly profitable activities. So podcasting is an indirectly profitable activity. So I'm not making money in this moment, but it could lead to potential revenue later if anyone wants to coach or whatever. Okay. So it's indirectly profitable. So podcasting is indirectly profitable, unless you have ads, in which case it's directly profitable. Okay. The third use of your time is directly profitable activities. So if you think about what you're doing every week on the week, you're out there and you're a podcaster, you have to look at all the things you do in a given week and then put them in the proper bucket. And what I try to do, and this is the hard part of business ownership. I'm a business coach. I have 30 people I'm coaching currently in business. So I'm not saying this lightly. If you are spending a lot of time on things that are not profitable, meaning they're not indirectly profitable or directly profitable, you will go out of business. You just will. And unfortunately, a lot of podcasters and entrepreneurs go into podcasting and entrepreneurship thinking that they're going to have more time. The truth is, only way later is that the case. In the early days, you're going to have less time. You're going to have to work more. And that's the unfortunate part. So the 3D plan, number one is delete. Delete as many things as possible in the bucket of things that are not profitable, meaning they don't lead to revenue ever and there's no money involved. And if you don't do this, you probably will go out of business. Okay, number 2 is not profitable or indirectly profitable. These things you can delegate. They're not directly profitable, so you can delegate. Not all of them. Don't delegate the podcast. You're the podcast host if you're out there listening. But anything that you can delegate, so that's the second D. The first D is delete. The second D is delegate. The third is double down. Double down on the bucket that's directly profitable. And so that's what Kevin and I had to do, going back to the whiteboard in the studio. We started coaching, and we started coaching for free, and then eventually it was $50 a call, and then eventually it was 75, and then 100, and it went up from there. But we had to delete the things that weren't profitable. We had to delegate a lot of the indirectly profitable stuff, like audio editing, video editing, that kind of thing. And then we had to double down on the thing that was profitable in order to pay for that delegation. And if you do that consistently and sustainably over time, eventually you do more and more and more percentage of your thing that is most profitable. And then you also start to lead a team. And then that's a whole nother rabbit hole of how hard that can be. But ultimately, that's the goal. And you start with 1 team member, and then 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8, and then you lose some. It's leadership, in my opinion, is the hardest thing in the entire world. But it's also the most rewarding thing in the entire world, because otherwise you really can't scale.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for breaking that down for us. I really like your bucket analogies because they really bring home, I think.
Nice. Thank you. I'm grateful you enjoyed that. Yeah,
sure.
that took me a long time to figure that out. Massive pain and failure to figure that one out.
Yeah, we're learning from you. Thank you. So tell us what you do for your client. Give us an extended elevator pitch and tell us how we can get in touch with you.
I appreciate it. Okay, so at the end of the day, underneath it all, it's improve yourself by 1%, improve your system by 1%, improve your execution of the system by 1%. In a nutshell, I help you reverse engineer your goals. And so set up the train tracks, stay on the train tracks, accountability, and then improve the train tracks. And that's really it in a nutshell. And we have this process we call dreamlining. I call dreamlining, where we take a dream statement, which is sort of your true North Star. And I have this necklace around my neck. It's a North Star that reminds me to stay on target toward the mission. And it's just a statement that indicates where you're headed. And it's pie in the sky. It's 10 plus years out. It's your dream. What's your dream? Okay. And then you break that into an annual goal. So 2024 is officially 126 days away, the end of 2024. I'm a big numbers guy, so I always break it down. I'm an engineer. Kevin said, you're not really a coach. You're more like a a success engineer. I said, okay, cool. But anyways, so the annual goal gets broken down into quarterly goals. So we have 34 days until the end of Q3. So that quarterly milestones is what we call them. And then the milestones get broken down into daily metrics and inch pebbles. And inch pebbles are just habits. So every one of my clients tracks metrics and habits. And so they have their dream statement that gets broken down into annual goals. Annual goals get broken down into milestones, which is quarterly goals. And then the milestones get broken down into inch pebbles, which is daily habits. So your daily habits lead to your milestones lead to your goals lead to your dreams. And those are the train tracks that my job is just to keep you on the rails. That's my job. It's accountability, it's consistency, it's sustainability, it's improvement. And then every time we jump on the phone, monthly, biweekly, or weekly, I just keep you improving the train tracks, improving the system. And I always say this question. I said, if you had to improve the system by at least 1%, what would you change? You can get rid of a habit, you can add a habit, or you can tweak a habit. But we constantly expand and contract these train tracks to make sure that they're sustainable long term. And then eventually you build tons and tons and tons of momentum, because ultimately in every business, a lot of us are trying to be good at too many things. We lose focus, and then we end up wandering generalities instead of meaningful, specific niche businesses that actually are good at what we do. And we've all fallen sort of victim to that. So that's ultimately my job, is just to help people. And then the cool part about that is that you build a ton of belief and self-worth through consistently keeping the promises you make to yourself and being held accountable.
You mentioned in your telling us what you're grateful for, that you're gratitude journaling, right? Mm-hmm. What are some of your other habits that you've developed in helping you keep a positive mindset and a mindset that keeps you going when you just want to just like throw in the towel?
Well, the first thing that keeps me going when I want to throw in the towel is caffeine. I'm kidding. I'm just joking. No, so some of the habits that I've developed that are positive, although I do have I do like caffeine. Some of the other habits would be journaling would be one. I have a morning mindset workout, which is a motivational video that I listen to every single day on YouTube. It's called Ode to Excellence. It's actually one of my previous clients. He did this video, and it's just really powerful sort of letter from your highest self to your current self. Very motivational, very inspiring. And then just reading every day, listening to speeches that are super motivational. So I have certain go-to speeches that I try to frequent. There's certain speeches on my playlist on YouTube that I've probably listened to 50 times, maybe more. But one thing I do want to make clear, and I know that you already can tell this, I don't struggle a ton with drive. And so, yeah, I have a lot of positive habits, and I've made a lot of progress, and a lot of this has been really challenging. But one of the things that I need to make sure I'm clear on, I've always been an extremely driven person, and I have a very high intensity level, to the point where I'm too much for most people. I understand that. But for anyone who struggles with drive, you got to start small and build. And you got to stay super humble. And honestly, you'll be more driven by fear probably than you will be by anything else. So you have to be afraid to lose. You have to be afraid to be embarrassed. And my business partner, Kev, he's not nearly as driven as I am. He and I will have a really tough month or whatever. And he's like, dude, you don't miss a beat. You're still getting after it. And so you have to understand what does drive you. And so what drives him is fear of failure. What drives me is maximizing my potential. So the reason I'm here right now, the truth of the matter is, it's number one, to serve. And number two, it's to practice my craft. Because when you ask me a question I've never been asked before, I get a chance to articulate something in a new way. And so after thousands and thousands of these interviews and podcasts and speaking and training and coaching, you eventually just get really good. And to me, maximizing my potential is super motivating. And I try to do that every single day. I know that won't land for everyone, and that's okay. And for Kev, he says, I don't wake up in the morning hoping to maximize my potential. I'm just trying to get the work done that I need to get done. And so if you're that way, that's okay. For me, I got to focus on humility. For anyone out there who struggles with drive, you got to work on self-belief. You got to work on self-discipline. You got to work on showing up even when you don't feel like it. And I know that can be a struggle, probably more than it is for me. And I think that you see these other people that are super driven. They're just a different type. They're a type A, a super achiever. And I don't want you to feel bad that you're not, but it's super important to understand that self-discipline is 90% of the battle, honestly.
All right. I appreciate you, Alan Lazaros, for coming and talking to us today. And I really like your pointers and how you impart information. You're high level, but you break it down so even I can understand. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, because that's been very hard for me to get to this point.
Awesome. You're good. Thank you.
Thank you again for having me. If this inspired, motivated, or educated anybody, I'm grateful, and anyone can reach out. So I encourage that. And everyone's on a journey. Trust me, it might look easy, but it's not. I coach a lot of people. I see behind the scenes. Everybody's struggling. You're not alone. Keep fighting the good fight.
Awesome. Thank you, Alan.